the real Red Devil? It's a random pizza delivery man who was jumped by the Red Devil and sent to them in this suit. In a bit of meta humor, he's played by Riley Schmidt, the stunt double who typically wears the costume to keep viewers from identifying the character from their profile. He's a good choice, looking androgynous with the height of an average man and the narrow limbs of an average woman. He could easily stand in for any of the characters. Hester runs in and says that she was attacked by someone, whom viewers can easily deduce to be Melanie Dorcas, the previous president of Kappa Kappa Tau, maimed by someone putting acid in the spray tanner. Chanel ignores her to interrogate the pizza man. He tells them that he was sent in wearing a bomb, and the girls narrowly avoid getting blown to bits. Chanel number 5 is traumatized by the event, much to the annoyance of Chanel and Chanel number 3. This scene is interesting because it's framed to make us initially sympathetic to Chanel number 5 as a normal, empathetic human being. But Chanel number 3 quickly steals the focus, and the framing eventually puts us on the side of the sociopaths, and has us laugh about how annoying Chanel number 5 is to them. Meanwhile, Grace tries to figure out if she wants to go all the way with Pete. This is complicated by the reveal that her father was a quote-unquote man-slut in college, and slept around so much that he ended up being the father of the 1995 babies, and probably many others.
I was a bit of a man-slut back in the day, and it was the 90s, so nobody wore condoms.
Trust me.
Given the fact that his promiscuity contributed to the development of the Red Devil serial killers, this could easily be interpreted as a punishment for having sex, in the same way that Halloween and Friday the 13th are often interpreted.
Sex equals death, okay?
But the show makes a point of saying that Wes's mistake was irresponsibility, not his having sex at all.
I didn't know. I swear. And if I had, I would have taken responsibility.
In this way, the show has a good message about safe sex, and a firm rejection of the anti-sex interpretation of slasher themes. She decides that she does want to have sex with Pete, but he rejects her advances out of guilt. He confesses to being the Red Devil. Number 3. Yes, there are 3 Red Devils out there. It's a good twist. You expect the reveal of 2 Red Devils to be the answer to the question of how many Red Devils there are, and stop wondering. According to Pete, who is an unreliable narrator, he followed a Red Devil, caught him as Boone, and Boone suggested that Pete should support the Red Devil campaign because it's designed to destroy the problematic Greek system that leads to plenty of deaths on its own, and just a few deaths to cause a controversy that makes the system illegal would be worth it in the long run. Pete pretended to agree in order to investigate the scope of the Red Devil conspiracy.
Cover-ups like this only work if everyone has tiny bits of info.
He found that it's laid out like a terrorist cell, and that in order to be seen as trustworthy with secret information, he had to participate and do stuff that would make them have a hold on him forever. By the time he found out who the other members were, he was in so deep that he convinced himself that he accepted their ideology wholeheartedly to keep from feeling guilty. It makes for an interesting post-9/11 divergence from the slasher movie formula.
She detonated the bomb!
The original slasher films, like Halloween and Friday the 13th, use lone psychopath antagonists. Scream's take on it was to say that the ghost-faced villain is a shared identity used by 2 psychopaths jointly, wanting to recreate the intrigue that a scary movie has. Scream Queens uses a similar concept of having a team share one villainous figure, but it uses the dynamic of a terrorist organization that we're more familiar with thanks to post-9/11 thriller shows like 24 and Sleeper Cell that stem directly from anxieties over the terrorist attack.
I saw a girl last year dressed as slutty Al-Qaeda.
In another bit of clever writing, he acts like a real person and stumbles to justify his actions. He contradicts himself. He wants to look better than he really is. He believes in some grand goal of defeating the Greek system, but is ultimately just scared, and felt like he didn't have a lot of choices, which parallels Grace's attempt to kill the Dean.
I am like a soldier at war. I am killing to stop more killing. It's totally justified.
Pete's criticism of that was likely an expression of distaste with his own actions. He is the ugly reflection of Grace herself. He tells Grace that the other Red Devil is one of her sorority sisters, but the Red Devil in question bursts out of the closet and kills him before he can say who. Grace escapes. She comes up with a way to identify the 1995 baby girl by analyzing the records of the girls who applied for college. To do that, she needs a diversion to get to the Dean's private records. So Wes seduces the Dean and ends up actually falling for her, while Grace and Zayde look for evidence.
How do you know I'm not the killer?
Because it's statistically improbable for the baby to manifest black features given her white brother, white half-sister, white mother, and white father. Not to mention the painting giving us compelling visual evidence that the killer is white.
I just know.
Or there's that. Grace and Zayde discover a girl whose records are obviously faked and identify her as the killer. They run off to do something about it. Chanel announces that she will clean up her image by going around apologizing to people, starting with Melanie Dorcas, who she finally figures out is the one who attacked Hester, based on her description. Chanel number 3 and number 5 join her, but number 5 backs out at the last minute. Chanel's apology consists of debating with Chanel number 3 which movie villain Melanie most resembles, and then trying to kill her out of the conviction that her attacking Hester means that she's the killer. Chanel number 3 pokes holes in this, but doesn't try to stop her. Grace and Zayde run in just in the nick of time and deliver the whammy that Hester is the killer. They actually include Hester's name in the student transcript that Grace and Zayde examine, but it's only there in one frame. You really have to buy the DVD and go in frame by frame to see it. I like the way that's handled. It's a nice touch. They go back to Kappa Kappa Tau to confront her, running into Chanel number 5 on the way. They find Hester in Chanel's closet with a stiletto heel shoved in her eye socket. However, she's still kicking. She wakes up and identifies Chanel number 5 as the Red Devil. The final episode then begins with a time skip to January 2016, where the good guys get their happy ending. Grace, Zayde, and snazzy eye patch wearing Hester all jointly run Kappa Kappa Tau. They've turned it around into a good institution, with a legitimate focus on sisterhood. Chad is raising money for charity. He even bought a huge monument to the fallen students. Everything is great. Hester is so comfortable that she shares with the audience that she is the killer. Duh? Hester broadcasts evil so much that I'm not sure anyone was really surprised that much. Keke Palmer even told people beforehand that the killer was obvious. After Pete's reveal that the last remaining Red Devil was a Kappa, I think the mystery of who they were stopped being a big mystery to the audience. We were only waiting for the characters to catch up.
Hester here, who's super weird and an obvious psychopath.
Gigi raised Hester and Boone in that weird asylum, where they give inmates enough freedom to run around, attack each other, and receive lessons on how to kill people. The 1995 incident led Dean Munch to pressure Gigi's sister to take care of the babies, leading to her committing suicide and Gigi getting saddled with the responsibility of taking care of the babies. Gigi tutored them on how to live up to her bizarre mission to take revenge on Kappa Kappa Tau. Hester represents herself as much smarter than her brother, who she dislikes. Gigi seemed to agree with that assessment. On the other hand, Hester seems to think that Cujo was a serial killer in a dog costume, so that's entirely relative. A previous episode showed her eager to hear the gory details of what she presumed was a story about Zayde killing Boone to escape, and that reaction appears to be genuine. Hester came up with the idea that they would be less suspicious if they stood out as weirdos, so she stole a neck brace from a patient who really needed it, and Boone pretended to be gay, thus explaining why he had a crush on Zayde. He was straight, but pretending to be gay as a cover.
That's the weirdest explanation for anything I've ever heard.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that I'll get into later. It occurred to me that the neck-breaking sound could have been Hester's neck getting into alignment with slapstick physics. But no, she faked it from the start, so it's really just lying to the audience.
Liar!
She fills in the blanks about how she, Boone, Gigi, and Pete accomplished things behind the scenes. However, it's never clarified exactly who cooked Gigi's head. The implication would be that it's Hester, but she seemingly wouldn't have the opportunity. Fans can't seem to figure it out. She intended to take revenge on every single member of Kappa Kappa Tau, but Grace and Zayde were genuinely nice to her, just because they were good people, so she decided to spare them. Instead of killing the Chanels, she decided to frame them for murder. She stabbed herself with a shoe, accused Chanel number 5 of being the Red Devil, and then did an elaborate frame-up in a parody of an Agatha Christie murder mystery resolution, where she brought in fake witnesses to convince Denise that all of the Chanels were behind it. The Chanels would get a fair trial, except that Chanel ends up yelling insults at the jury, and they get angry and pronounce them guilty.
And I am choosing to ignore this verdict.
What? You You can't ignore the verdict.
What verdict?
The judge calls Chanel crazy and sentences them all to that same stupid asylum, where they all live happily ever after in drugged up bliss. Yay? Things aren't over, because the dean figures out that Hester is the killer. She threatens to turn her in, but Hester knows that the dean killed her husband, so they have a truce for the time being. And even though Chanel thinks that she's safe, the Red Devil comes for her one night. Is it Hester? Is it someone else? Who knows? And with that, we conclude Season 1. Unfortunately, the last episode is pretty clunky and is the most disappointing part of the storyline. It's paced weirdly, a lot of the reveal is told instead of shown, and the ending is anticlimactic. Given that the mystery isn't really a big deal, I think it was a mistake to only reveal it in the last episode. I think it should have been revealed a few episodes earlier, in natural character interaction, instead of Hester breaking the fourth wall in monologue to us. We already understood Hester and Chanel as frenemies who want to kill each other, so understanding her as the Red Devil would fit right in. Then we could have a more proper farewell to these characters, as we saw how they clashed. Scream Queens has some similarity to the anime Death Note, where characters drop like flies and no one is safe. And it could stand to be similar in a few other aspects as well, following the villain and showing their relationship with the hero. Death Note actually follows the villain, Light, as a villain protagonist, and we watch him face off against L, the hero antagonist, from the perspective of Light and his allies. Light and L work so hard to take each other out that they end up friends. Or more than that if you believe the yaoi fans. And that makes it all the harder as they approach the inevitable conclusion of their struggle. On the day that Light wins, L can sense that his life will soon be over. But instead of hating Light, he takes him aside for a breather, and they share a moment. And even though Light will not give up on his quest to kill L, he respects him in that moment. Despite everything, the two of them are friends. And they share that one moment before returning to their struggle and its inevitable conclusion. That's what Scream Queens needed. There needed to be a moment where Hester and Chanel shared a moment and became reflective of their relationship and themselves. Hester isn't just a faceless slasher movie villain like Michael Myers in the original Halloween series. She and the Chanels live together for a while and develop relationships, so her cruelty in framing them is all abrupt and distanced. She needs a more intimate send-off and a moment to say goodbye. Her cruelty should be personal and even respectful. Otherwise, what was the point of making her likable?
What did any of that mean?
Well, for better or worse, that's the Hester finale we got. The bad guy won, and I admit that has an appeal to it. A serial killer is best friends with Grace and Zayday, and they haven't got a clue. So their victory as nominal protagonists is ultimately worthless. It's a gleefully cynical take on the standard formula. On the other hand, I feel like the show was hesitating to truly subvert the narrative. I think it should have gone full Game of Thrones and had Hester kill Grace. After all, Grace is ultimately a superfluous element, and just imagine how delightfully evil it would be to have Hester and Zayday standing together as new BFFs. Zayday unaware that Hester killed off her previous BFF. Here's how I would do it. The sisters team up to poison the Dean. Grace and Chanel hand the poisoned cider off to the Dean and watch intently for her to drink, waiting for the first sign of its effect. But something's wrong. She isn't dying. They struggle to figure out what to do, hoping that they just need to wait for her to drink more. Suddenly, Grace starts choking. She looks down at her cider and realizes someone switched their glasses. It had to have been someone at Kappa Kappa Tau. Was it Chanel? Before she can accuse her, she dramatically dies in front of them, and Chanel and the Dean start screaming their heads off. Then the role of nominal protagonist could fall on the shoulders of Zayday. We wouldn't need Grace's reassurance that she isn't the Red Devil, because once again, she isn't the same race. She thinks she has an ally in Pete, until he confesses his role in a moment of guilt, and is killed off by the Red Devil. Then everything that was done by Zayday and Grace is done by Zayday alone. Think about how little that really changes. Until she finally stands together with Hester, not knowing she was conned. It would be far more twisted and far more fulfilling. Oh well.